Hello, ladies and gents. It's Justin Johnson on the module A225, Block 2, Confidence and Crisis 1840 to 1880, edited by Loftus. On page 42, on Unit 2, on the influence of today, young teenagers, mature teenagers, young adults, mature adults, OAPs. Let me tell you, life isn't easy. It's what you make it. Each and everything that you think is impossible, it's not impossible if you put your mind to it. Methodical practice. If you keep telling yourself no, you'll never accomplish it. If you keep trying, keep finding new routes, new directions, having a vision. Page 42. In the mid-century, the expansion of the British Empire was presented as beneficial to all in the United Kingdom through increased trade and through emigration, which it was hoped would reduce competition in overcrowded labour markets and provide new living spaces for the poor and the unemployed. In the 1850s, emigration societies emerged in response to various crises and problems. For example, as a result of failed harvest and the Highland clearances. The Highlands and Islands Emigration Society helped nearly 5,000 people move from the Western Scotland to Australia between 1852 and 1857, Divine 2011. The popular liberalism of the mid-century made equilibrium possible by imagining a world of different interests balanced by minimal state that created the environment for self-help to flourish. Such a vision depend on prosperity and stability. In practice, there were booms and busts through the mid-century, which threatened different industries at different times. The cotton famine caused a widespread depression in Lancashire from 1861 to 1865, while intensive competition in London continued to erode the quality of life of artisans and craftsmen in trades such as furniture making and tailoring. Steady economic growth was over by the 1870s, and the period between 1873 and 1896 is widely considered to have been a depression. The impact of depression on the poor was made worse by the patchy nature of education, welfare and support across the United Kingdom. The Liberal governments of the mid-century promised a careful balance between tax and spending and assured the public that their money would be spent wisely and with caution. They considered the need to improve life in the cities and to provide access to education, public health, and poor relief, even to immigration, but they insisted this was the best paid for delivered by voluntary groups and local ratepayers in local communities. According to Colin Matthew, the classic Victorian scenario was for general government to identify a problem or to have a problem brought to its attention and to solve it by setting up a locally accountable, controlled and financed institution, sometimes helped by a grant in aid, Matthew 1987. In this way, as you'll see in Unit 13 on health in the city, it was able to minimise the state while advocating social reform. Those local government and voluntary agencies, the strength was also a weakness. Unit 10 will explore how it resulted in a patchwork of charitable agencies which operated alongside the poor law system, but which were often able to provide reliable support for the poor and the sick at times of crisis. Undoubtedly, increased levels of stability and prosperity in the 1850s helped inspire optimization, but this did not run very deep. The experience of modern life in mid Victorian Britain and Ireland was often unpredictable and precarious after Chartism. Working people responded to their precariousness with their own organisations and institutions. The cooperative movement, friendly societies and trade unions flourished in the 1860s, Although these were just a sort of collectivised self-help measures that liberals such as Cobden and Gladstone would support. They also become a vehicle for a different kind of politics, one that expressed some of the criticism of competitive individuals and political economy that you saw in the Chartist movement. In Unit 14, you will learn how these groups helped shape a revived campaign from an extension of the franchise to working men in the late 1860s. Page 44. Block 2 asks you to explore the nature of mid-Victorian Britain and Ireland. As you work through Units 19 to 15, consider whether you think equipoise is a useful concept for explaining years from 1840 to 1880. First, you'll look at two issues that stretch the logic of liberalism to its limits. The Irish famine and the New Poor Law. As Units 9 and 10 demonstrate, the effects of the Irish famine and the New Poor Law were felt across the mid-century as stories of hunger and starvation which exposed the limits of self-help and the cruelty of laissez-faire political economy. Despite this, as you'll go on to see in Unit 11 and Unit 12, the period saw the thriving of a religious pluralism that fueled networks of charitable agencies and voluntary societies, and the rise of middle class who promoted Victorian values and of individualism, work, and thrift. You explore how these new social forces began to transform the urban landscape and make inroads into local and central government through civic reform and the reform of civil service. Through an investigation of public health in Unit 13, you'll see how the practical lights of reform involve struggles between central and local government and question over the role of experts and scientists in everyday life. Despite improvements in the social and economic life, the continued precariousness of working class life started to undermine a sense of equipoise. Critics of capitalism, such as Karl Marx, pointed out the powerlessness of workers in the face of mechanisation, competition for work, de-skilling and low wages, but by the 1860s, liberals such as John Stuart Mill also began to question whether it was fair to subject individuals to the vagaries of the free market. Unit 14 will look at how, by the 1860s, working men were yet again persuaded that ensuring a fairer society depended on them having a vote and a say in government. Finally, as you'll see in Unit 15, the idea behind the Great Exhibition that free trade and non-intervention would unleash enterprise and energy and lead to peace and prosperity. It was fundamentally exposed in the British Empire when attempts to secure markets and influence led to conflict and violence. We're on the introduction of Unit 9 and the aims of this unit. We evaluate the British government response to the Irish famine. Explore the impact of the famine of Ireland, Britain, and the wider world. Develop your skills in analysing visual sources. Develop through a discussion of the historiography and the Irish famine, and an understanding of how political issues influence the way in which the past is interpreted. Through the introduction, this unit will look at the Irish famine of the 1840s, sometimes called the Great Famine of the Great Hunger. The immediate cause of this famine was a natural disaster of failure of successful potato crops due to a fungus known as Phyphoria infestans, that commonly referred to as potato blight. Once infected, a field of potatoes could be destroyed in a matter of hours. In the following lines, William Stuart Trench, 1808 to 1872, a land agent in King's Country, now county of Offaly, describes the impact of the blight on his crop in 1846. I could scarcely bear the fearful and strange smell which came up so rank from the luxuriant crop, then growing in around no perceptible change except the smell had as yet come upon the apparent prosperity of the deceitfully luxuriant stalks. It is enough to say that the luxuriant stalks soon withered, the leaves decayed, the disease extended to the tubers, and the stench from the rotting of such an immense amount of rich vegetable matter become almost intolerable. I saw my splendid crop fast disappearing and melting away under this fatal disease. The potato blight originated in North America and is thought to have spread to continental Europe as a result of transatlantic trade, wind, rain, and mist. Spread the fungus further afield, and large areas of the continent were affected, notably Belgium and Netherlands, France and Germany. In 1845, the blight spread to Britain too, and had particularly severe impact in northern Scotland, specifically agricultural communities. In the Hebrides and the western Scottish Highlands, although Phyphoria infestans caused difficulties for the poor whoever it struck. What made Ireland remarkable was the scale of this impact. Between 1845 and 1851, it is estimated that over 1 million people died as a result of successive failures of a potato crop in Ireland. This figure represents approximately 12.5% of the population, making the Irish famine of 1840s proportionally one of the most destructive in world history. In addition to the multitudes who died for starvation and famine related diseases, a further million people fled Ireland. Ireland is divided into 4 provinces: Connaught, Ulster, Leinster, and Munster, and 32 countries, as you see from figure 9.2. The greatest concentration of famine, including deaths, occurred in the western province of Connaught and the 7 western provinces of Munster. To establish the excess death rate, normally mortality rates, that is, death rates before the emergency, are subtracted from the crude mortality rate. During the period under consideration, the resulting figure is a measure of excess deaths. Only, in other words, those deaths specifically related to the emergency. So, in County Mayo, for example, out of every 1,000 people, 60 more died during the years 1846 to 51 than was usual. This may not sound like much, but Mayo had a population of 388,887 in the 1841 census. If you divide 388,000 to 887,000 by 1,000 and multiply it by 60, the rate of excess deaths per 1,000 people, you can see that you're looking at a figure of over 23,000 excess deaths in Mayo alone for this 5-year period, and this figure is based on conservative estimates. Section 9.1 will consider some of the reasons why a failure of a single crop had such a devastating impact in Ireland. Section 9.2 will consider the cause of the famine, with a particular focus on the British government response to the crisis. Indeed, the extent to which the government's actions and inactions served to exacerbate and prolong the famine has been a subject of intense debate among historians, which will be introduced to in this section. Finally, Section 9.3 will look at some of the immediate and long-term consequences of the famine for Ireland, Britain, and the wider world. Clearly, this unit deals with an extreme event in one part of the United Kingdom and an extreme event in global history. It is an event that both challenges and supports the ideas of equipoise and progress in the mid-19th century, especially in the context of the British government's response to the crisis. As you work your way through, you'll see that the mid-Victorian sense of confidence, particularly a sense that new knowledge and new ideas could overcome seemingly overwhelming difficulties, was evident at times. The new ideological views, as well as older views about religion and the Irish people, play an important role in explaining the government response. While the famine was over by 1851, unresolved issues from this time would re-emerge in the late 1860s to challenge the fragile political stability that had prevailed in the mid-19th century.